welcome to India Global. I am Vedant Agarwal. On the show this week, the geopolitical fallout of a pro-China president-elect in the Maldives, and also the latest on the diplomatic standoff between India and Canada. India being firm on its stand, asking Canada to withdraw its staff from New Delhi. We'll get you all of that, but here are the headlines we're tracking this week. In the India-Canada row, New Delhi firm on its diplomatic parity stand, asking Canada to withdraw staff from New Delhi. Reports suggest 40 Canadian diplomats are flown out of India. This as Trudeau is forced to climb down on the row with India. Meanwhile, Putin praises Prime Minister Modi and lashes out at Justin Trudeau. Putin calls Trudeau an idiot for praising Nazi veterans. Well, Putin backs India on a bid for a permanent UNSC seat but slams the West. Putin says India is growing stronger under PM Modi. Tragic news. 100 people have been killed in an attack on a Syrian military college. The deadly drone attack on the graduation ceremony at the academy. In the Syria battle, over 200 are wounded in the drone attack. Our special focus, a pro-China candidate in Maldives and his first move against India. Muizzu says we'll send back foreign troops out of the island nation. A test for India-Maldives ties amid a change of guard. The pro-China government in India's backyard and what it means. And in some positive news, a jailed Iranian activist has won the Nobel Peace Prize, and Nargis Mohammadi, a champion of women's rights, is this year's winner. She's been awarded for fight against oppression of women. And our lead story on India Global. Well, India toughening its stand on the diplomatic row with Canada. While the diplomatic stalemate continues, India has now asked Canada to withdraw dozens of its diplomats from New Delhi. And if reports are to be believed, 40 Canadian diplomats have already been flown out of India. Meanwhile, softening his stand considerably, Justin Trudeau has now said that Canada is not looking to escalate tensions with India. Take a look at this report to understand how this diplomatic standoff panned out this week.
You got called the External Affairs Minister. Sir, you meet the... Sir.
It started with the sacking of Trudeau's diplomat in India, a summons for the High Commissioner, and a call for downsizing Canada's mission in the Indian capital.
Our concerns are related to ensuring parity in diplomatic presence.
Over 10 days later, India has now asked Canada to withdraw dozens of its staff from New Delhi in what it calls a bid to achieve diplomatic parity. Going by Canadian media reports, as many as 40 diplomats, most of whom are outside the High Commission in Delhi, have been flown out of India.
We are looking at parity, we are looking at the fact that there have been interference and there has been a much higher number of Canadian diplomats here, and hence though the discussions on achieving parity are ongoing, and rest of it I can't comment on it yet. Obviously, if the parity is achieved, given that Canada has a much larger number of people there, would likely be a reduction in the numbers.
Between agents of the
3 weeks and counting, the stalemate between the two global powers is far from over. But what has not gone unnoticed is Trudeau's public admission of what many see as a diplomatic mistake in his move to isolate India. In a significant climb down from his earlier stand, Trudeau now says Canada is not looking to escalate tensions with India.
Over the past number of weeks, Canadian security agencies have been actively pursuing credible allegations of a potential link between agents of the government of India and the killing of a Canadian citizen, Hardeep Singh Nijjar. There are credible reasons to believe that agents of the government of India were involved in the killing of a Canadian on Canadian soil. We're very serious about building closer ties with India. We're not looking to escalate, as I've said. We are going to be doing the work that matters in continuing to have constructive relations with India through this extremely difficult time.
This after his poll ratings fell significantly in the past week, making him a distant second candidate just months ahead of the high-stakes elections. India, meanwhile, has maintained that Khalistani extremism in Canada is unacceptable to New Delhi, with External Affairs Minister S. Jaishankar pulling no punches and calling out Canada for what he says is permissiveness for terror in the garb of freedom.
Let's not normalize what is happening in Canada.
While stakes are high for Trudeau with the upcoming elections and a floundering economy, New Delhi is unwilling to relent from its diplomatic stand as ties between the two countries hit rock bottom. Vedant Agarwal for NDTV. And meanwhile, in a parallel development, what could be a major turning point in the diplomatic row between India and Canada, Canadian media reports say that a top Sikh leader has said that Khalistani extremist Hardeep Singh Nijjar had a big role to play in organizing training camps for extremists. Well, listen in to what Canadian journalist Daniel Boardman had to say on this development.
We have a Sikh leader from the Okanagan Sikh Temple, which is near Surrey, BC. He's alleging that Hardeep Singh Nijjar was running weapons training and essentially extremist training camps to attack India. So what do we have on him? We have the testimony of a Sikh leader who was near him. We have a 2016 Vancouver Sun article that talks about the possibility of this guy running terrorist training camps. We have him on the same billboard as the architect of the Air India bombing, calling them both shaheeds or martyrs in Punjabi, calling for the assassination of Indian officials. We have him holding the AK-47, which the Indian media has provided very good evidence that it was taken in Pakistan. We have him openly praising the Khalistan Tiger Force, putting up pictures of their members who have committed violence, extremist violence.
So, well, as Modi versus Putin plays out, as Modi versus Trudeau, I beg your pardon, plays out, in a rather strong statement, now Russian President Vladimir Putin has backed India in its bid for a permanent seat at the United Nations Security Council, hitting out at the West as well. Now, he's praised India's growth under the leadership of Prime Minister Modi. In fact, in quintessential Putin style, he lashed out at Justin Trudeau, calling him an idiot for honoring Nazi veterans inside the Canadian Parliament.
Не знает, что во время войны против России сражался Гитлер и его приспешники, то он идиот. Он, значит, просто в школе не учился, не имеет элементарных знаний. А если он знает, что этот человек сражался на стороне Гитлера, и называет его героем Украины и героем Канады, то он негодяй. Или так, или так.
And we're moving now to a special focus on India Global this week. A pro-China government in India's neighborhood with the election of Mohammed Muizzu in Maldives. Now, his first announcement as soon as he won the election after defeating India-friendly former President Solih, well, he said that he is committed to sending Indian troops out of the Maldives. What are the diplomatic and geopolitical ramifications of a pro-China and what is called an India-out president-elect in the Maldives? We'll have special guests joining us, but first let's go across and take a look at a deep dive at how this particular development has panned out, who is this president-elect, and much more in this report.
Mohammed Muizzu won the presidential election in the Maldives last week after a second-round runoff against incumbent Ibrahim Mohammed Solih. And within a few days, Muizzu made his intentions clear about India. The pro-China Maldives president-elect marked his victory with a pledge to end foreign military presence in the island nation. He didn't name India, but his words couldn't have been clearer, as New Delhi is the only foreign power with a military deployment in the country. The win comes in the wake of a political campaign that saw geopolitics being brought into the center stage. PM Narendra Modi congratulated him and said that India remains committed to strengthening the time-tested India-Maldives bilateral relationship. Pleasantries aside, the big question is how will this win impact India and the Indo-Pacific? The India Out campaign led by Muizzu means a pivot by the island nation to China. This is a departure from incumbent President Solih's foreign policy towards India. From additional financial assistance of more than 250 million for the Maldives, one of the main beneficiaries of New Delhi's Neighborhood First policy, to pacts in cybersecurity and policing, Solih's tenure saw India-Maldives ties come closer, both strategically and economically. Muizzu's mentor is Abdullah Yameen, the creator of India Out campaign and former Maldives president who was jailed for corruption. Under Yameen, Muizzu served as the construction minister. He played a pivotal role in the government's development program, in part funded by China through its Belt and Road Infrastructure Initiative. During his campaign, he had said that the incumbent president had allowed India an unchecked presence in the country. Soli will serve as a caretaker president until Muizzu takes the helm on 17th November. So why is Maldives, an island nation of just 5 lakh people, so important to two Asian powers and the world? Maldives sits in a vital position in the middle of the Indian Ocean, located near one of the world's busiest east-west shipping lanes. The change of guard marks a shift in the geostrategic equations, with the advantage going to China. Vishal Vivek's report for NDTV.
And well, Maldives is literally in India's backyard, and this particular development is going to have major geopolitical ramifications, what it means for India and what it means in terms of the larger geopolitical picture. Joining me on India Global this week, I have with me R.K. Radhakrishnan, Associate Editor of The Frontline, somebody who's reported extensively out of Maldives as well. Also with me, Andrew K.P. Leong, an independent China strategist. Thanks so much, gentlemen, for joining us on India Global this week. Mr. Leong, first to you. Now, Maldives, of course, we've seen this sort of tug of war between the Asian rivals, India and China. But it's an interesting time geopolitically, at a time when we are seeing India's rise as a voice of a global south. Also, as the leader of the G20, India has really advocated for various countries, various Asian countries. So at such a time, how do you see this change of guard in the Maldives?
Well, I think you've got to look at the map and to more this economic considerations. I mean, it's a small island state. It is one of the lowest lying island states in the world, and it depends on agriculture and also tourism.
Yes.
And then, of course, where are most of the tourists coming from? Now, China is the largest tourist exporting countries in the world. Before the pandemic, it's sending something over 100 million tourists across the group. So more and more tourists are set to visit the island. And
yes.
Secondly, of course, the China-Belt Road connects the Maldives with China's supply and value chain.
Yes.
So all these calculations suggest that the Maldives people feel that they need to pivot.
And as you said, we need to look at the geographical location of Maldives as well. Of course, it's strategically very important. And Mr. Radhakrishnan, talk to us about that. What makes Maldives, in a sense, indispensable for India? Because we see, of course, commercial vessels also plying the Indian Ocean through the Maldives. It's close to Lakshadweep, several nautical miles away. In fact, it also connects India to key sea routes. So both China and India vying for Maldives also because of its strategic location.
Yeah, absolutely. That is right. It's right in the corridor of the oil. Most important thing, because energy supplies decide everything. That the energy supply is going to China, and the reason why China is building a port in Godar and of course other places is to ensure that if there is a problem with the ocean routes, it will take the oil up to Pakistan and from there on. Now, the problem in Maldives right now is that there is a lack of clarity on who actually Muizzu is. Muizzu is not Yameen's protege. The problem is that Yameen did not endorse Muizzu till such time that his own wife endorsed Muizzu, because Muizzu used to be.
That's an interesting point you're making there, that there's lack of clarity on who he is. But I'll come back to that. But first, let me go across to Mr. Radhakrishnan on the larger question on geopolitics. Let me bring in Mr. Leong now. China's expanding footprint in the Indo-Pacific, in what many call an attempt to create a string of pearls in the periphery of the Indian Ocean. How do you look at that? Does India, in a sense, need to rethink its diplomatic policy, particularly in the Indo-Pacific?
China's view is always global and not just looking at specific spot on the map. I refer to the China-Belt Road, and of course China-Belt Road, especially the maritime Silk Road that goes from the eastern seaboard of China through Sri Lanka and now the Maldives, and then through the Indian Ocean to the Middle East, and then from the Middle East picking up the land, the overland route, the so-called economic belt, all the way around Central Asia.
Absolutely. That's an interesting point.
Pivot to the west.
And Mr. Radhakrishnan, as you were talking earlier as well. Absolutely. And as you were talking earlier, what about the sentiment in the Maldives? And you've reported from there. What is there skepticism about China's dead diplomacy? I mean, they don't need to look very far, something that panned out in Sri Lanka as well. What is the sentiment in Maldives vis-a-vis the election of a pro-Chinese leader there? And what is the sentiment vis-a-vis India?
See, there are only 500,000 people in the entirety of Maldives, including voters and non-voters. Voters are about 2.82 lakhs. That's all. That is it. Now, people of Maldives, I mean, take the political guys, maybe, it can be 100,000 people in members of political parties. Barring that, everybody wants a decent relationship with India because for all their medical needs. Now, Sri Lanka is a no-go because Sri Lanka is short of all kinds of supplies. People don't trust Sri Lanka any longer. So, Trivandrum, Cochin, Bangalore, Chennai, these are the places that
by and large, there is a positive sentiment vis-a-vis India is what you're saying. Of course, there's a large diaspora population there as well. But the last word to you, Mr. Leong, do you think that a pro-Chinese government, a pro-China government in the Maldives could also potentially mean, breeding ground for terrorists? Because, this India Out campaign that has been fought by the president-elect in the past, term as well, in the past pro-China government term, we've seen that radicalism rose significantly.
Well, I don't think that China looks at things from a zero-sum point of view. For example, India is playing, of course, the United States, between the United States and Russia, and then also allies with or partnerships with a host of other countries. And the same applies to the Maldives, and the same applies to Beijing.
Right.
But I forgot to mention a very important dimension, which is that the Maldives are a Muslim country. Now, with the recent tilt of the Indian government policy, seems to be marginalizing the Muslim community relative to what happened in the past. And that plays another role in this change of relationship.
Okay, that's a very interesting perspective there again, Mr. Leong.
A dialogue member of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization.
Absolutely, absolutely. So multiple aspects there to this story. Of course, as I said earlier, also right at the beginning of the discussion, that Maldives has been a traditional ally of India. Remains to be seen how this pans out. He's yet to assume office. But the first announcement that he said that he is, made that he's, committed to the cause of throwing out foreign troops from Maldives. Thanks so much, gentlemen, for joining us on this very important discussion here on India Global. But moving now, heartbreaking news from Syria. A deadly drone attack during the graduation ceremony of a military college. This has killed over 100 people and left 300 people injured. Take a look at this report.
A celebration that turned into tragedy on Thursday. A drone attack ripped through the graduation ceremony of a military college in the Homs city of Syria and killed at least 100 people and wounded more than 240. Lieutenant Ibrahim Shaban, a shattered man, as he mourns his fiancée, Raneem Koba. She was killed while attending her brother, Lieutenant Hussein Koba's graduation.
استشهدت هي والدها المرحوم محمد القبي وأختها الصغيرة الطفلة البريئة ريما القبي الله يرحم روحها. وأنا موعدة هي بدي زفة شهيدي، كنت بدي أنا أخطبها بإذن الله زفة شهيدي ورحمة الله تعالى على جميع الشهداء. والله كسرت ظهري، هذه مو بس خطيبة، أم وأخت وصديقة وكل شيء. الله يرحم روحها.
According to reports, the Syrian Health Minister Hassan al-Ghabash put the death toll at 80. No one immediately claimed responsibility for the attack. Syria's military said that drones laden with explosives targeted the ceremony as it came to an end. In a statement, the military accused fighters backed by known international forces for the drone attack.
معركة نحن بصراحة تتم يعني مستمرة لحتى نتخلص من هالمسارات ومن المجرمين اللي يعني أرقوا الوطن وسكان الوطن
الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر.
Syria's retaliation was swift as heavy bombardment was reported in the rebel-held Idlib region. It has been more than 12 years since the Syrian crisis began, when peaceful protests against President Bashar Assad were met with a brutal crackdown. The conflict has killed more than 3 lakh civilians, and even after ISIS's defeat in the country, the situation remained tragic. With Vishal Vivek Usama Shah for NDTV.
Absolutely tragic there. But moving now to what seems to be a never-ending legal saga for former US President Donald Trump. Well, in the latest trial unfolding in New York involves his 2 sons, and Trump, being Trump, made a surprise appearance, and well, he had a lot to say. Take a look.
Court appearances, indictments and social media rants. These 3 things seem to be following former US President Donald Trump wherever he goes. The latest in Trump's legal woes saga is unfolding in New York in a civil fraud trial that began on Monday. The former US President, his 2 adult sons, Donald Jr. and Eric, and the Trump Organization are accused of massively inflating the value of their properties by over $2 billion in order to secure favorable loans.
Donald Trump and the other defendants have committed persistent and repeated fraud. Last week, we proved that in our motion for summary judgment. Today, we will prove our other claims. My message is simple. No matter how powerful you are, no matter how much money you think you may have, no one is above the law.
On the first day of the trial, Trump made a surprise appearance at the courthouse where he criticized the judge and the New York Attorney General Letitia James, who brought the case. Trump has denied any wrongdoing and in his typical style branded the case a witch hunt.
It's a disgraceful trial put forward by an Attorney General who's corrupt. We have murders going all over the city, all over the state at a record level. It's an epidemic, and they waste their time on this with banks that were very happy. They got all their money back. They weren't defrauded. I've been defrauded.
Staying true to his style of social media outbursts, Trump branded the judge rogue and the attorney a racist. If Trump loses, him and his company would have to pay a $250 million fine and be banned from doing business in New York. He's expected to testify later in the trial. This civil lawsuit is just one among a plethora of legal troubles that Trump faces. He's facing 3 criminal indictments with cases ranging from election fraud to mishandling of classified material. Altogether, Trump has 91 felony charges, including 44 federal and 47 state charges against him. The stakes are really high for the billionaire, as a defeat would mark a significant blow to the real estate empire that propelled him to national recognition long before he ran for the White House. With Vishal Vivek, Bureau Report, NDTV.
And finally, amid globally turbulent times, some silver lining and a story of hope. Jailed Iranian activist Narges Mohammadi has been awarded the Nobel Peace Prize for a fight against oppression of women in Iran and promoting human rights and freedom. Well, she beat Ukrainian President Zelensky, also NATO Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg and UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres to win the top honor. An immense personal cost there for Mohammadi to receive the Nobel Peace Prize. Well, that's all that we have on India Global this week. Goodbye and keep watching.